Bienvenidos a todos. My name is Belle Whelan. I have the pleasure of being a member of the board of Excelencia in Education, and I am so excited that all of you have joined us this morning here in person and the press on the phone. This is an exciting day for Excelencia because we've got some news. Not all good, but still some news, and I think all of us learn best when we have information. In your chairs, if you're here in the room, there is a copy of the report that will be discussed this morning and some additional information for you.
It is truly a first for us in terms of setting down here in this city, in this state, and in this region. It's an important week at Excelencia in Education, and to underscore its importance, I'm going to start at the very beginning, which is Excelencia in Education is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Washington, D.C., and our mission is accelerating Latino student success in higher education. As Belle suggested, when the policy world began to turn their attentions to the question of how is this country going to thrive as we look at a knowledge economy, as we begin to recognize what our current productivity, to use the jargon, is in terms of college graduates and what it could be, we were there.
You know, we need to make sure that we're really looking at and supporting state and community efforts. We are a national organization, but we know that instead of having policy try to drive down and force good programmatic efforts, that we need to learn from what's happening on the ground with communities day in and day out and have that inform policy. In Georgia, 9% of the population is Latino. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, you know, we did a quick state ranking, and Georgia ranks 10th out of 50 states in its concentration of Latinos. That's pretty significant. You know, we always think about California, Florida, Texas. You know, Georgia's right up there, top 10. Nationally, Latinos are 22% of K-12 public school enrollment, 22%. That's even more than our national representation, which is 15%. There's just another proof that we are very young, and we're even more represented in K-12 than we are in the overall population. In Georgia, 11% of the K-12 public enrollment is Latino. Your overall Latino population is 9%, 11% in K-12. In 2011, we saw about 21% of Latinos have an associate degree or higher versus about 38% or so of all in the United States. In Georgia, about 18% of Latinos in Georgia, Latino adults, have an associate degree or higher. So imagine if 11% of your K-12 population are Latino, 18% of your Latino adults have an associate degree or higher. This area of looking at first-generation college goers is really important. Too often, Sarita and I are in conversations where, if the data compel, people say, so I don't know, but I don't know what to do. Well, here are some examples of what people across the country are doing. So you see two examples there, and proud to say that these are in Georgia. Some other states we don't have examples concretely that are looking at Latinos. And so it's there's a Hispanic Outreach and Leadership Program in Armstrong Atlantic State University, and Latino Student Services and Outreach, LASO, at Georgia State University. Just two examples, but really the point being, there are wonderful things happening. We need to pay attention. If these are effective practices or resonate with what people in the community are trying to do, let's take a look at them. And then, the bigger picture for us at a policy level is, can these efforts be brought to scale, or can they be replicated? And I can't say universally the answer to that is yes, but it's important that we pay attention to that so we're not just grousing about where we are or not as a country. Here are the three areas that we're trying to work with ensuring America's future. We're trying to inform the broader public on these efforts, and I think you've heard that enough. I don't need to go into tons of detail, but we've got roadmaps of what policy recommendations are that can make a difference. We've got all kinds of efforts trying to inform the broader public. We're trying to increase engagement and collaboration. And, ensuring America's future, we have 65 partners representing 7 sectors as an effort to make sure that we are engaging and collaborating and serving this population amongst all of the populations we're serving. And that's really important, because it not just validates that the kind of work happening here matters and that there are others doing it, but that other sectors are seeing the value and importance of that in what we're doing overall. And the third is we're really trying to increase knowledge of effective practices and tactics.
We work with 16 states in the South And we work very closely with the policymakers, the legislatures, and the governors. The governor always serves as our board chair. But we also work very deeply in the states, trying to take the policy message that we feel is probably one of our major strengths and carry it down onto the campus level. We're looking at the college readiness side of the equation because, and we completely concur with Excelencia, the pipeline and what's happening with students before they even get out of high school is critical in helping us ensure that they not only get into college, but they are successful there. So we have been working now for about 4 years on an initiative that we call College Readiness in our states to help the states look at the way that they're preparing students. We do support very strong curriculum. The Common Core state standards have been embraced by most of our states, of course, including Georgia. We are encouraging states to take those, embed them in the curriculum and the math. Literacy, make sure the students can read well before they leave high school so they can do well in all of their courses. And another key piece of that message is looking at the students in 11th grade and making sure that they are on track to be successful as they get through high school and go into college. And we're helping our states develop bridge courses or transitional courses. So if students in 11th grade are assessed and found to be weak in areas, that they take that 12th grade senior year as an opportunity to address those issues, cut down on remediation, and make sure that all students are ready to go into college-level courses. And on the college side, we have another initiative around college completion, working with a number of other national groups to help move all of our states toward an educational attainment level of at least 60% of the adult population with a good, solid certificate, associate, or bachelor's degree or above.
For us, during this past decade, for sure, we've been able to give over $8 million to Latino students here, about 2,500 students. And obviously this is good, but it's not enough. We get a lot of applicants, and a lot of students go without the funding that they need. In addition to the work that we've done in the scholarship piece, we do also educational outreach, and I'm happy to see one of our former colleagues here who did much of this work here in Georgia. In the past decade, we've done over 300 events, reaching about 30,000 people here in the state. And that's important for us because obviously besides the financial need that this community has, there is also the need about knowing how to get to a college degree. Right? You don't know what you don't know, and our community doesn't know how to get to college, how to access scholarships and all that. And that also has been important for us as a national organization to really learn about the challenges that the community faces here in Georgia, which are very particular and very different sometimes than what we have seen in states like Texas or California. More importantly, during this past decade, we have been able to engage in 2 initiatives here, 2 pilots, one of them with the University of Georgia. And this was a pilot that was funded for 5 years, where we looked at what it takes to increase the number of Latinos who are being recruited, retained, and graduating from the university. And it was a very interesting project. We selected 10 schools, who we call target schools, and these were schools where the majority of the students were Latino, were low income, and had very little, the school had very little history of sending students to UGA. In the 5 years, the enrollment from those schools grew 78%, into UGA, and this is important because you need to create that pipeline of Latinos going to the flagship institution. But most importantly was that those 90 students that we funded had a higher retention rate than most UGA students, and that is important because the students were 98% low income. And so I think it shows that when you have targeted initiatives, when institutions of higher ed come to the table to say, we're going to do this in a very dedicated way, in a very targeted way, then obviously you can get those results. And so the other pilot we're currently engaged on is work in 4 different communities in the state of Georgia. This is advancing our Generation First degree in Atlanta, Gainesville, Dalton, and Savannah. And this is working with partners in the area who have the expertise, who have the know-how, who also want to advance the Latino College Completion agenda, but obviously who haven't had the history of 37 years of doing this work. It is important for us to be able to work with them. We're learning a lot of what's happening in rural areas of Georgia, things that, again, we don't see when we mainly work, in places like Atlanta. Most of our scholars, I put a fact sheet, most of our scholars in Georgia are from Atlanta, but so we're learning a lot of the stuff that's happening in the small, rural areas, challenges, perceptions about Latinos, where they should be going, what people think they should be doing, all of that.
We're one of 14 sites nationwide. Project grads are normally located in pretty urban areas where you have many economically disadvantaged students. Many of them are the first in their families to attend college. I think you're beginning to see a trend here. And so organizations like ours tend to make sure that those students are, first of all, we work with them very early. We want to do an early capture and captivate their attention and interest in college. So we talk about taking them on a trajectory from being college inquisitive to being college eager, then being college aware, college exposed, then college ready, then college bound, then college enrolled, then college persistent, then college successful, and then college completers. And so that takes a lot of us along that continuum to make that happen. And so at any point during that continuum, if one thing happens that disrupts that family structure, one thing happens in that academic situation where a student is told you're not eligible for AP, or I don't think you're AP material, that student can be derailed and potentially not become a college enrolled and college successful and college completing student. And so what Project Grad seeks to do is to, first of all, change the mindset. We create a college-going culture partnering with schools and school districts. We don't just assume that a student is the only one that has to have their eyes focused on college. Teachers and administrators have to believe that student can go to college. And if that doesn't happen, many adults have talked about the fact that there was that one teacher who told them they weren't college material. There was that one counselor that said, don't even bother applying. And so we equip students with tools and strategies and structures, and their parents, because I must also add, a lot of times we like to isolate students from their families. And in minority communities, family is very important, the extended family and the nuclear family, and so we try to equip the families with information. We don't want to be the ones that come in as a savior and teach the student or teach the institution that they're going to attend how to deal with that student. We want to make sure that all of the structures that support them also are able to do that.
We work with minority-serving institutions most recently over the last decade or so very closely with Bell on issues of accreditation support. We work in K-12, P-12 really. Here we've been more of a research shop, think tank, advocacy organization focused on the broad policy issues and the kinds of changes in that sector that we think would promote access and excellence and opportunity for young kids, all kids, but especially kids of color and underrepresented groups. And the third thing we do is we run a small, boutique-ish, but high-fiber leadership program, an experience for college students, juniors and seniors at the undergraduate level, and to a great degree, graduate students. These interns come from all over the country, though we privilege the South in our selection process, I think is a good way to say it. And we create these 8-week field experiences in organizations in the South whose own missions and work are comparable to our own.
Single Stop's a part of this effort because what we do is we connect low-income community college students with the resources that they're eligible for, and we do it all in a single stop. We know that financial barriers are one of the major reasons that so many students drop out. There are many reasons, but financial are such a big one. We also know that interventions as little as $1,000 a year can make all the difference between staying in school and having to leave and not complete. And so what we do, our intervention is to marry the social safety net with community colleges. We put together 4 parts. We do public benefits access, legal counseling, financial counseling, and tax preparation. We bring all of these services into either the financial aid office or the student services office to serve students holistically, all in one place, and get them the financial resources that they need that can augment financial aid, augment scholarships, and help them stay in school through completion. Completion, excuse me. Last year, we helped 20,000 community college students. We helped them access $40 million worth of benefits, tax refunds, and social services. 8,000 of these students were Latino, and we think that number is going to continue to grow. This is especially important for low-income Latino students because there's also a gap not just in college completion, but in the rates of accessing all the supports that are eligible so that students don't have to choose between groceries and graduation. So, for example, the Department of Agriculture has noted that about 56% of eligible Latino students, or eligible Latino low-income families, are not accessing the nutrition assistance that they're eligible for. And in terms of the earned income tax credit, which can bring in, $2,000 or so into a student's household, into a family's household, Hispanic parents, low-income Hispanic parents, 27% of them knew about this program, as compared to 76% of non-Hispanic white parents. And so there's really an information gap there in what's available and what families can be accessing to help with the resources to stay in school. Single Stop bridges this gap.
By, I think, 2025, 22% of the population will be Hispanic. The number I use is that by 2050, 30% of the population will be Hispanic. That's an extraordinary number when you think of it. And when you put it in the context of a country that is going to be increasingly relying on educated people, increasingly relying on science and engineering, which has been the main creator of wealth and jobs over the last 30, 40 years in this country and in the world, then we find that you and us are in the challenging but privileged position of making a difference in really and truly populating the leaders of our economy going into the future. And we cannot let them get lost.
And there needs to be this national effort to recognize the fact that this population is important and that it's big and that it's going to be necessary to make sure that they have the tools they need to be successful in the future.